Unrelated, I feel very inspired having Reagan and Michael here with me.
Yeah.
Did I send you a picture of Michael's current pose?
He's like sitting,
He's sitting like Mr. Rogers over here.
little legs dangling off.
You've officially started my horror memorabilia
Nice.
collection.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Watch No Evil. This is Matt.
And this is Zach.
And today we're going to be taking you on a trip to Christmas with the 1974 film Black Christmas. It's always interesting, I think, to have a horror movie set at Christmas, which is so often depicted joyfully, and this was really the first movie to use it as a horror point of interest. That being said, it's very unimportant to the setting and the content of the film.
Right. I was left at the end a little bit disappointed in the lack of use of Christmas themes in the actual plot of the movie. It's like that you have that setting and there's all the Christmas decorations and there's Christmas carols, but it has nothing to do with the actual plot and the killings in the movie.
When I think of kitschy horror movies that are going to have some sort of holiday gimmick, I'm like looking for those moments where maybe this person is gonna get hung with Christmas lights like in Ouija, or they're gonna get electrocuted by like a giant glowing Santa.
Or at least strangle someone with a wreath.
Yeah, exactly. But this movie, one of the significant parts about it is that the setting of Christmas time is for the most part incidental, and I was thinking about where it does actually come into play. And the only spot that really makes it use that Christmas setting is because some of the girls are going home to their families and some of the families are coming to pick up their kids. So with the first death in the film, when Claire goes missing, it's a way to get her father to the location to explain why he's coming to visit and pick her up and why it's weird that she's not around. The other one that I think is kind of important, and you as another music student can back this up, that's when we have juries for music students, and that explains Peter prepping so hard for this jury he has to give, and they call it a recital, but he's giving it to 3 people with notepads and suits, so it's a jury.
To those who don't know, when you're in a music conservatory, a jury is a performance that you have on your instrument at the end of a semester for a grade that you're judged on by a panel of faculty.
It's that demonstration, and they make it seem for him like it's so important. Like it is just a make or break thing.
He very much seems like he's a more authoritative and like older student, so it seems like he's nearing the end of his time at this college. So I was like, oh, maybe he's going for this concert soloist contract or something with some group.
He does definitely seem older, and it's so funny because having gone through both a bachelor's and a master's in piano performance, I totally relate to this push at the end of the semester to over practice and overwork yourself on an instrument. But oh man, was he being over dramatic.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you also relate to that feral need to destroy the instrument after you've failed at it?
But I felt that even when I was doing well with the instrument. I was just like, how fun would this be?
See, I'm primarily a trombone player, and I feel like trombone is a little more fragile of an instrument. You can give a piano a good smack and it won't do much. Whereas trombone is like, if you touch it just the wrong way, there could be a dent.
Yeah, piano, that metal frame is not gonna budge. But still, even when we were watching this and he was about to take the stand bass to the inside, I was like, oh god, I hope that they took out the strings.
Yeah, that would have been a real horror moment right there if like a string snapped and decapitated him. And
oh man, that would have been an amazing and totally unnecessary kill for the movie. Peter's entire energy surrounding this is just, alright dude, chill. They used what sounded like a legitimate recording during his performance. That was one of the things that I had said to you. It seemed like they were trying to pass off a Messiaen piece as a bad performance of piano music.
Yeah, when it's really just non-conventional
When
theory.
it's just non-conventional, yeah. It's just not what you would expect of someone, an outside person would expect of a conservatory pianist. When most people hear concert pianist, they think, ooh, Beethoven, Chopin, Mozart, Liszt, no one else. But, there's a whole spectrum of contemporary musicians that wrote for the piano, and you could sort of tell by the performance that there were certain parts of it that were intentionally written to have that kind of dissonant affect to it. But it's so funny because it's like it's showing him and he's just like moving around and he's just sweating playing this piece.
That's totally counter to what I tell my students. As a musician, if you're making something look difficult, you're not doing your best on it. Any type of performance, whether it's musical or a sport or something, if you're making it look hard, you're probably not doing great at it.
Yeah, and it seems like such an interesting character choice to give Peter. And for those of you listening, obviously we're spending so much time on this particular element because they try so hard to make Peter the red herring of the film. And so this piano recital, jury, whatever, is the culmination. This is supposed to be the moment where we as the audience get to see him snap. This was the final straw. This broke him and we get to see the violence come out. And now that we've seen the violence come out, it gives pause as to whether or not he was behind the other murders that took place in the movie, considering that we get introduced to Peter after the first murder, the murder of Claire, and this breakdown doesn't happen until later on in the film. You wouldn't have reason to suspect Peter early on until we see him just absolutely destroy the heck out of the piano, and then we're like, oh, this is who we are supposed to think that the killer is.
Right. Clearly he has anger issues. And they leave a bunch of breadcrumbs throughout the movie when Jess is running away from the killer, and then Peter is breaking into the basement where she's hiding. It's like, oh, well, he's definitely the killer. We should be afraid for her right now, and he's definitely not coming to defend her or anything, even though he's acting all friendly at that point. And going back to what you said about Claire's death, I think Jess was like on the phone with him. It was this scene that they're intersplicing between the suspense buildup of Claire's death. And so I think it's supposed to be very subtly planting the idea in your head that, oh, this guy is a bit of a jerk. And then, of course, Jess like Han Solos him on the phone.
Yeah.
He goes, I love you. And she goes, I know. Well, at this point in time, what was this, 1973? When did Star Wars come out? When did that happen?
Oh,
let's see,
I think
Empire
it was after that.
Strikes Back. Yeah, it was 1980. So they stole that iconic line from The Empire Strikes Back, stolen from this movie.
It's stolen from Black Christmas, yeah. There is the scene where Chewie has to get back to the Wookiee home planet, and when he does, they are watching Black Christmas on their TV.
And they're like, what the hell is Christmas?
The other character that I thought was sort of red herringed is, for me, the sergeant, the one that actually was taking their information and was sort of ignoring them. He was the skeptic of the film. We're supposed to be like, oh, he's the incompetence of police that is so often portrayed in horror movies. There's something weirdly malicious about him later on in the film that then it's like maybe he's another suspect as killer, but then all of a sudden they have the whole interaction with John Rutter, the detective that's laughing at him, and Ken Fuller, the lieutenant, where they're talking about the phone number that Barb gave, and then it's just supposed to be like, oh no, he's just an idiot, and we're just supposed to think of him as an idiot.
See, I never really suspected him, because I think I got on the Peter train early.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, early on, I feel like you're supposed to be like, you know what, this guy's just like an incompetent policeman, like you said.
Yeah, it was early on, but he kept showing up. That for me is always like the thing that I'm looking for. It's how often is this character showing up, especially in early horror films, because it would be weird to have a character show up 10 minutes into the end of the film and it's revealed that, oh, they were the killer, and this character is inconsequential. He just kept reoccurring, and nothing that he really did or said had value to it. So it was
Mhm.
just like, okay, this just seems like he might be a contender.
Most of the male characters in this were supposed to be suspects in the eye of the
Yeah,
viewer.
except for the dad.
He was like the only male person besides the main detective who
Hmm.
seemed like they were legitimately invested in solving the problem.
The other boyfriend too, Chris.
See, Chris is the other one that I suspected.
That's interesting because he was the one that burst in, right?
See, I think Chris seems to have more of like a motive, because what if Claire and him had a fight or something, and he's like, well, I gotta kill her now because I'm a little bit unhinged and, fighting my testosterone.
Was he dating Claire?
Yeah, he was Claire's boyfriend.
For some reason, I was thinking he was Barb's boyfriend, but yeah, you're right. He was Claire's.
No man can nail down Barb.
He was also the one that like burst into the police station though, that was just, why aren't you doing anything? This is ridiculous. And so I guess it was just, for me, maybe it was the way that he was portrayed. I believed that he was innocent.
Right, see, when he did that, I actually got more suspicious of him. It seemed just kind of like forced to me, but then again, it was acting in the 70s, so who knows.
Right. He was so absent for so much of the movie too, so it would make sense.
Right, that's the thing. Kind of like Nash, what you were saying, is like he was coming in and out at pretty suspicious moments, and there was like absolutely nothing that really implied him. So once Peter was obviously not the killer, then I was like, maybe it was Chris. But we really don't know. There's nothing to give you a decisive, yeah, this guy was the killer.
After Jess just beats the hell out of him with a fire poker.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta feel a little bit sorry for Peter, like, even though he's trying to force Jess to have this baby that she didn't want. So obviously not like a great dude, but still, he was framed for murder. The other things, like the piano string, what do you want to call it? Like the ominous, what do you call that? You're the piano player.
Yeah, they definitely made it, from a score perspective, seem like he was part of it, because there were only 2 score ideas, and it was choral singing of Christmas songs and all inside or prepared piano stuff. So they were swiping on the strings, they were plucking inside the piano strings, they were muting piano strings and playing on the keys. The entire score seemed to suggest, ooh, it's Peter, and this is how you know it's because we're only using the piano, which he plays.
And it was every time
Something bad happened.
The phone calls, too, where they would have the inside piano, like that ominous roaring kind of effect.
Yeah, I love
going
that.
on.
I love that stuff.
At first, it didn't seem out of place, but then you're like, wait, piano.
Now this is starting, because it starts with like an electronic, like the opening credits is an electronic score.
The opening credits was Christmas carols. So I remember being like, wow, they went straight from one Christmas carol to another from the very beginning.
But it threw in some electronic music too underneath of it.
I mean, that's the interesting thing, is that even though there are Christmas carols going on in the background a lot of the time, because I think like it's supposed to be like, oh, they're playing music in the background, or like there's the carolers.
Mm-hmm.
That music, sometimes you'll have that, but also the soundtrack going on, and the two don't necessarily fit together.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they're meant to.
Yeah, you get like a nice mix of the diegetic and non-diegetic.
That was intentional, to be like, this isn't the Christmas that you know and love, like there's something amiss here. And I think it was just to create that mood.
This isn't Last Christmas. This is Black Christmas.
I'm not going to give you
this
my heart
isn't the
again.
Ashley Tisdale cover of Last Christmas that you thought it was.
Oh, God.
Oh, man. Oh, and then there was the whole scene with the carolers, too, which I thought was hilarious, when the little girl had just been found murdered in the park, and this woman is out caroling with these children. It's just like, go home.
And then with the child carolers, Jess is the only one watching them, and she claps after the kids sing, and it's right as the killer is done killing Barb. That's another thing that made me think it was Peter, because it's like she's applauding the kids, but at the same time you could think she's applauding Peter on his recent performance. It wasn't a musical performance this time, it was a murder performance. So,
she's giving the kids the sort of acceptance and acknowledgement that she never gave Peter.
And children are obviously
terrible.
Children are obviously a theme. Well, yes, but also a theme in this. And this is what bugs me about the whole Christmas thing, is because they make a huge deal out of Jess being pregnant and wanting to abort this baby. And then Peter, of course, wanting to keep the baby and wanting to stop her from doing so.
Yeah.
Then there's the killer places the baby doll in Claire's body when she's like in the rocking chair. She's
Oh,
dead
right.
with the
Yeah,
bag
yeah, yeah.
over her head. And over the phone, the killer quotes what Peter said during that discussion. And it's later that one you can figure out is like he was just listening on another receiver to that conversation.
And it definitely sets up this idea that it's Peter.
Also tied with the fact that Peter doesn't seem all that upset that some creepy dude is making calls to the sorority house in that way. Even like just tells him about that. He doesn't even like talk about it with her. He's just like, I want to talk about this baby thing, not your immediate safety. They very much make him like he is the red herring, like you said, but they make him seem as if he has multiple personalities with his anger over the jury performance. And then they juxtapose the chase scene with the killer and Jess when she hides out in the basement and the killer's like acting all weird as he does and saying the really weird like perverted things and kind of manic tone of it.
Seeing it now is way different than what I expected or remembered. I forgot how crass those remarks actually were. They get really, really heated. I totally forgot about it. It's one of the things about this movie that it's sort of gross.
It's meant to be, though. That's the thing. I guess what makes me feel like the killer really isn't any of the characters that we see at the end is because, well, obviously Peter is cleared. He's dead. And we see the whole, there's still a guy up in the attic at the very end of the movie. But there's also like the first person perspective shots. One at the very beginning of the movie when you see him like looking in the window and you hear that heavy breathing. That's very much Michael Myers-esque.
Sounds like he has a mask on.
Well, not only that, but it sounds like he's got like some sleep apnea thing going on. Like he's got some sinus condition. Because then there's also when he's on the phone, there's this snorting that he'll do.
We talked about it, and I think that we've sort of given up the ghost already, and you're not going to watch this if you care about seeing the movie, because why would you? But they so heavily imply that it's Peter, and then at the end, it is still left unresolved, and you just know that it's not Peter. And they don't find the bodies of Claire or Phil.
They found Phil. They just didn't find Miss Mac, the house mother.
Oh, right. Miss Mac.
Because Phil and Barb were like stacked on top of each other.
Yes, you are correct. I forgot which one was Phil, but yeah, Miss Mac does not get found, and she had the meat hook into her, and
yeah, that was an incredible kill. I mean, you saw it coming from a mile away, but he would have had to really line up that shot.
That one's pretty brutal. And actually, there's something weirdly beautiful about the kills in this movie and about just the way that they framed it. You look at the kills in Halloween. What kill do you remember from Halloween?
Bob, where he got stabbed to the wall.
He got stabbed into the wall. There's this like really beautiful framing to that scene. And that's the one that I remember too. I don't really remember or even care about the other kills in that movie. And in this movie, all of the kills, or at least all of the repercussions of the kills, have this mystifying quality to it. Like the killing of Claire and then continually going back to Claire's body with the plastic wrap over her face, sitting in the rocking chair at the window. There's something that's really macabre, but really interesting about that shot and the choice to like keep going back to it and how she's in plain sight. If someone looks up into the window, they're gonna be like, what the hell is that? It's like, get the Christmas decorations out of the attic, and then when you're done, they go back and you wrap them up in their plastic bags and put them away. And so she's just sort of ornamental to that scene. There are two things, and it's those two kills. It's hers and Miss Max that I thought were Christmas related, because Miss Max, I'm just like, oh, he's got this hook into her and he's hanging her up in the attic like a Christmas ornament.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that one. In fact, with Claire, I thought it more of like he's wrapping up a gift.
That's even a better pull.
I kind of like your idea better because it works out with the attic. That's another Christmas thing, is he's coming down from the roof.
Very
so it's
Santa
like this
Claus,
Santa
yeah.
Claus. And something that makes you think right before Peter dies, that Peter dies in the basement, as opposed to like the killer hangs out in the attic.
With a fire poker.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that
the
either.
Fireplace stuff, yep.
It's very subtle in its Christmas cheer.
The one that I was going to get to was the way that he kills Barb with the glass unicorn. Those shots in that framing is like so otherworldly, and it's really beautifully shot. This glass unicorn, and then it's got the blood coming off of it, and it really strangely ethereally lit. All of a sudden, it is a pull from a different horror movie, which I thought was really interesting to see how they executed that like in the middle of it.
The variety of the kills is also kind of like refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
I find it just on the edge of cheesy with how he kills Barb with the unicorn tchotchke thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's plausible, and it's like it's different, and it's refreshing in that way. And really the only two kills that we actually get to see are Barb's and Mrs. Max. As Claire it kind of just cuts away from her as soon as he starts attacking her. And then Phil's, we don't see at all. We just hear over the phone. And then the cop that gets his throat slit, we don't even find out until later. And that's another one I want to talk about, is with the cop, Jennings, who is stationed outside the house. That is a different kind of kill than these other ones. The other ones are more seemingly atmospheric in a way, where he's like killing them with what's around. He kills Claire with the plastic bags in her closet. He kills Miss Mac with the hook that's hanging in the attic. Barb with the unicorn. So with him, it was very different, and I think it was more of a kill of convenience to make sure that he could get away with it.
Yeah, necessity rather than art.
Yeah, necessity. That's a better word.
As morbid as it is to compare the others to being art, but yeah. That is such a trope in horror movies. It's just like, hey, so we need stuff to happen in the house, but we already realistically placed a police officer outside in a car. We got to get rid of that character. And they always are just like, you know how we're going to do it? We're going to slit that guy's throat and just leave him in the car. It's like we're hands are tied, because they do it in Halloween too, and it happens in the Scream movies. They just like kill the cop in the car and then whoop scootily doop out of there.
I'm sorry if this is a far distant reality, but if I were a serial killer and cops were around, that's like when you start laying low. Yeah. You don't kill the cop and more people. That's another charge. That's a separate charge. You want to lay low. Maybe skip town.
And it always seems relatively, I've been using the word incidental a lot, but it always seems like that is just the one where they don't care. It's really nonchalant, because with Claire and with Miss Mac, at least the killer, took the care to be like, I don't want these people getting found. But if you kill a policeman in his police car outside of a sorority house on a college campus, somebody's gonna see that. Mm-hmm. Somebody will know that happened.
To be fair, I don't think this guy is really planning. I think these are all like very much crimes of passion that he is committing. Mm-hmm. And I don't think he is well adjusted enough to even plan out so much as his next victim. But that being said, at the very end, I was disappointed. I was hoping that it was Peter, because that goes along with the baby theme. That's another Christmas thing. Is that Christmas is all about baby Jesus. And I thought that's kind of like the route they were going with. It's like, well, you can't abort baby Jesus, so like you have to watch all your friends die as a punishment for even thinking about it. And then it ended up not being him.
They gave this motivation that ended up being like a fraudulent motivation to trick the audience.
And it just felt cheap at the end, where it was like, aha, gotcha. And it's like, yeah, but I don't feel good about it. It's not like a Sixth Sense kind of thing. Just give me the gratification of being right earlier on in the movie.
It's interesting too that the 2006 film, the remake, they give him a backstory. They give the killer a whole background and reason for why all of this stuff happened. They were like, hey, we're going to say that he was abused and he murdered his parents and his little sister, and now he lives in this attic. Ta-da! And it's like, I don't like that one either. Just make it Peter. The identity of this movie as a Christmas horror movie is, of course, up for contention, because I ask you, Zach, could this movie have been set at any other season?
If they had just gotten rid of all plot filler that was having a Christmas party and having Christmas carolers, then yes, they could have done it.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, we want a Christmas horror movie.
And it was still so iconic because, I mean, it was so early, and a lot of people consider this to be like the first slasher movie, which is not the case, obviously, considering Peeping Tom was more or less the first movie. And I think Buckets of Blood came out before this, too.
Yeah, you could argue that Psycho is a slasher.
Yeah. With the killer's perspective, because that's one of the cool things about this movie is they do killer perspective for some of the shots, which they also do for Psycho as well when he's doing the stab in the shower. And it's very clear how significantly John Carpenter's Halloween borrows from this. That being said, it is really interesting how the Christmas elements play into it in the way that we just explained them away. It's just like, oh, it could be this, it could be this. So I think that there is some interesting interpretive elements that we could make regarding this film and Christmas. Now I have to ask you, how would you make a horror film about Arbor Day?
Wasn't that just Poltergeist?
Is Poltergeist take place at Arbor Day?
No,
Oh,
but there's the tree that tries to eat the child.
I forgot about the tree that tries to eat the child. That is the best reference that they have in Scary Movie 2. What a powerful era where we could have people make parodies of horror movies so significant.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, Arbor Day, like... Oh, have you seen The Ritual?
Yes.
Yeah, that could be an Arbor Day horror movie. It's all about the tree spirit.
It's so funny to set these things at holidays, and I think that there are a lot of holiday-related horror movies because it's sort of a shtick. And so Halloween, I think it's interesting because the idea around Halloween is not necessarily important for it to be at Halloween. That could have taken place at any time. It just so happened to match up with Halloween because, you know, a mom and dad could go and leave the babysitter taking care of their kids at any time of the year. They just so happened to do so on Halloween.
But, I mean, Halloween is an intrinsically spooky time of year, so and we develop that connection in our minds, so it seems like the obvious choice.
Yeah, and then they've tried to do Thanksgiving with movies like Thanksgiving. Hard to do, I think. I don't necessarily think that one has as significant of a pull. And, well, they also have a President's Day horror movie.
Really? Is it like zombie presidents?
The killer dresses up like Uncle Sam and then kills people who he deems to be un-American. July 4th, the July 4th movies. There's a lot to it. That being said, the point that I wanted to make obviously was just like, yes, this movie could have taken place at a time other than Christmas, but this is one of the few movies where I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. It's not shticky. It's not relying on the Christmas as the gimmick. It is able to maintain the horror elements regardless of having the Christmas backdrop to place it against.
Right. Although I would have liked a little bit more Christmas in this Christmas horror movie. Just a little bit more. Like, just give me something, one kill that has something to do with, like, a Christmas Carol or something.
Impale them on the top of a tree like a star.
Just something to, like, tie the actual horror to the Christmas. It was just, here's a more horror movie with a Christmas setting.
Yeah.
If it wasn't called Black Christmas, that's fine. Serial killers can operate at any time of the year. We get it. But I believe that the whole purpose of them choosing Christmas was that he kind of wanted to juxtapose this dark serial killing / home invasion with the joy and the brightness that we associate with Christmas.
Because this movie, it gives Miracle on 34th Street a run for its money.
It does. As scary as Christmas movie.
Yeah, as scary as that movie is. But, like, you ask for a Christmas movie, I'm just like, yeah, Krampus, Black Christmas, any of the Silent Night, Deadly Night series.
Guys, we almost did a Hanukkah movie.
We almost did a Hanukkah movie.
Yeah, happy Hanukkah, by the way.
Happy Hanukkah.
There's a horror movie called Hanukkah from 2019 that we almost did, and then I watched the trailer for it, and honestly, I don't think I can handle it. It looks really gory, just overwhelmingly sadistic. We might do it someday when I have more of a stomach, but for now, Christmas movies.
It's just interesting that there's, I think, a better horror aesthetic that comes out of Christmas than comes out of Halloween. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could call The Shining Christmassy horror because of all of the snow. Or, Frozen, not the Disney Frozen, but the Frozen where they're stuck on the ski lift.
Well, since we were comparing this to Halloween, I just want to point out what both movies have.
Mm-hmm.
They both have young adults who are partying and drinking, and they both make a big deal out of the virgin characters.
Right, but she dies in the beginning of this movie.
Yeah, she dies like at the very beginning, so like, well, that's not a thing. Whereas in Halloween, Laurie is the virgin and she survives the whole time. So this one kind of flips the script on that.
I mean, this one really started the script, didn't it?
I guess so. So I don't know where we got this idea that the virgin gets to live.
I mean, you could even say that it comes from Psycho, because that first kill, it's because she's an improper woman. She stole all that money and she was having this torrid love affair with a man from California. The idea of the sort of rules of horror, which are don't have sex, don't do drugs, don't drink, don't say I'll be right back. That whole sort of set that became codified with Scream. This movie, it defies a lot of conventions of horror, I think, that we come to expect of horror movies. Even with the characters are all wildly different and they seem relatively realistic.
The dynamic that they have in that sorority house does seem very realistic. You've got Barb, who is the cold, crass character who's always smoking and drinking. You're like, well, this character can't survive.
Mm-hmm.
She's gonna die, and she's the token deviant of the group.
Yeah.
And then Jess, who is obviously the final girl and the main character, and she's got her relationship drama. And then you got Phil, who has the personality of stale bread.
Don't diss Andrea Martin like that.
Well, okay, so what is her defining characteristic, Matt?
No, don't challenge me. I don't know. I don't remember.
Her defining characteristic is that she has a cold.
That's true. But hey, we lived in a fraternity house. Didn't people get colds?
Yeah, but that wasn't the only thing they had going on.
The setting of a sorority house, I think, is one that is found a lot in horror movies. The thing I liked about this particular one was it didn't try to make the sorority house seem like, ooh, this is Delta Nu, and we have this giant mansion with this huge open foyer, and they made it a realistic sorority house. Looking at the way that they had it designed and where they had things, it seemed, even the actual house seemed real. It felt like the sorority houses that we've been in.
I mean, it even felt kind of like our old fraternity house that we used to live in. It had the same kind of
like the
aesthetic
wood
to it. Yeah, where everything is wood.
Yeah. And the doors were questionable.
That's a thing in this movie, is that when it's just Phil and Jess left, they go, oh man, the only door that's been locked this whole time has been the back door. And we haven't even locked any of the windows. So they go around and they lock all the doors and the windows after everyone's dead.
A good move. Regardless.
I mean, yeah, it should have happened about a day earlier.
Yeah. But this was the 70s, Zach. It's a realistic setting. And actually, I think the fact that you and I lived in a fraternity house that got robbed with 15 people, and it makes me be like, man, someone actually could break into this house, and this is all realistic.
Yeah. There was one time, shout out to our friend Devin, where Devin and I were the only people in the house for the first day of winter break. Mm-hmm. Someone could have come in there and killed both of us.
Yeah, or Devin could have just killed and ate you.
He is the bigger friend of the two of us, so...
So, moving on.
I was going to say, this was my first Christmas horror movie, I think.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if I've ever seen one before.
So what did you think?
I mean, we kind of already talked about it, but I was expecting more Christmas in the Christmas horror movie that was called Black Christmas.
How many new horror movies have we done for you in this podcast?
Oh my gosh. Well, now I'm going to have to look at the list. The Thing, Bird Box, Silence of the Lambs, Cargo, Evil Dead, Shopping Mall, Halloween, Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, Rear Window, and now this. So that's 10. That's 10 of the 18 episodes.
Yeah. So now here's the question that I had. We've gone through a diverse subject. That was one of the things that we set out to do when we organized the podcast. We talk about, okay, we should watch a slasher movie, we should watch a zombie movie, a changeling movie. We go through these sorts of topics, like, so that we don't have any real overlap from movie to movie. I think we did a great job about that with the Alfred Hitchcock, because we had slasher movie, we had a sort of suspense mystery, and we had a creature feature with the birds. And this is another slasher movie, right? This is considered a slasher movie. Would you consider this a slasher movie?
Yes, I think that I would, relating to subgenres of horror. I think that's the neatest box that it can fit into because there are multiple kills in a variety of ways that are paced out one by one throughout the movie.
Mhm.
It just feels like a slasher because of that, based on my experience with slasher movies.
Does he really do that much slashing?
Barb and Phil are the ones that get slashed.
What happens to Phil?
I don't know, she's just like cut up and covered in blood.
Yeah, there's a whole thing with that. And also, don't forget the policeman. He also gets a slashed. That's the interesting thing I think about slasher movies. We call them slasher movies because of films like Halloween, where character has machete and or butcher knife in Halloween's case, was thinking Jason too, stabbing or slashing, killing these people. Over time, the idea of the slasher genre, I think, has opened so much that even now we look at this movie and it's just like, oh yeah, this is a slasher movie. But in reality, it's just a serial killer movie with the guy who does the killing. Because, like, would you call Silence of the Lambs a slasher?
No, that's a psychological horror movie.
There's this interesting dynamic about how we categorize these movies as well. That being said, I think that one of the things that I like and appreciate so much about this movie, going back to them, are the diversity of kills in this compared to Halloween. Because in this movie, I remember how he kills pretty much everybody except for Phil. The thing about this movie is that I remember all of those kills, and I'm very aware of their placement in regards to their ingenuity and creativity. And I would say that of the movies that we've done so far, this one has some of the most interesting deaths.
I enjoyed the variety, but the variety itself doesn't feel like it's outstanding in relation to like the subgenre of slasher movies or just serial killer movies. It's more so the characterization of it and the mystery behind it. I do think that the unicorn kill was pretty great. Although I think Claire's death is almost the most notable because there's that iconic image of her in the chair with the bag over her head. But it's also not a typical horror movie style kill.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, you're going to put a bag over my head. Like, no one's really concerned about that.
It's a spy movie move.
Or like CSI, is you'll be like, oh, the person was asphyxiated.
It just seems so inefficient.
It seems like there'd be a lot of struggle.
You know, spy movies, they're like, it leaves very little evidence.
Yeah, I guess it's due to a desire for less gore. I think that a ton of gore in this movie probably wouldn't have played too well during the time, because that was before the time of very gratuitous gore in movies. You have The Evil Dead, like we've seen, and things like that. But this movie was trying to set itself apart from that kind of horror movie to be a little bit more subtle and realistic. I think a lot of it was they were trying to be more of a psychological horror movie, trying to lean more on the home invasion aspects of it, given the search for the 13-year-old girl, just like the overall involvement of the police. This could be a good segue into some trivia.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
This trivia is called What Child Is This?
God damn it.
All right, first question. What major change did director Bob Clark make to the script?
Is it regarding Billy?
No, he just toned down the graphic nature of the kills. Like, he was the one that wanted it to be more of a psychological horror movie rather than a slasher. They originally planned for more blood and gore with the kills.
Which would have felt early. I don't know.
That kind of goes with what I was just saying. It feels like that wouldn't have played too well, and this movie wasn't popular as it was at the box office. So I feel like that either would have made it more popular and gotten more of a cult following, or it would have just been like a complete flop.
Right. I don't know either. I think that it probably would have been the same. It would have certainly been more shocking.
Right. That's what I'm thinking of. I don't think it would have been received very well. Next question. This is kind of what you're getting at. What was the original title for this film? And I've got choices. So there's A, Red Christmas, B, Stop Me, C, Down Through the Chimney, or D, Stranger in the House.
So it's 2.
Stop Me. You're correct.
Yeah, it was originally Stop Me. But I believe that when it went to release, it was Silent Night, Evil Night, because they were afraid that Black Christmas would be read as like a blaxploitation film. So they changed it again.
That I didn't see anything about, but they actually, I think what you're thinking of is Stranger in the House was the title that they planned for its primetime network debut.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so this one, they canceled the network debut of this because 2 Florida State sorority students were murdered 2 weeks before it was scheduled to go on TV.
Okay, so good idea that they did change that.
Right, and I just thought this was kind of interesting because we talked about Ted Bundy in a few of the Alfred Hitchcock episodes, and Ted Bundy was the one who committed those murders.
Wow.
So we've come full circle.
Talk about serendipitous timing.
Right? I was like, what? I have to put this
We're
in
just
there.
manifesting.
He is somewhat peripherally related to a horror movie, outside of the way that you would expect him to be.
Yeah. All of the ways.
You'd think he would be the subject. Anyways, third question. The snow seen outside of the house was fake. What substance was it made out of?
Okay, pulling from my horror knowledge. Like extinguisher foam?
Oh, good. I'm going to count that as a win there because the local fire department supplied a foam material that was very similar to extinguishing foam. It's probably exactly what it was. Good job.
I feel like I've seen that used before. There's another film that has done that.
Yeah, I don't think it melts very fast, so I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason they use it.
Funny side note that they said the grass that was underneath it grew back greener after that winter of filming. So I guess if you want a green lawn, put some extinguishing foam on it.
A green lawn spray with fire extinguisher.
This episode of Watch No Evil brought to you by Scott's Lawn Care and Fire Extinguishers.
The secret is fire extinguishers.
Yeah, also, everyone go and check that there's at least one fire extinguisher in your home. One on every floor of living. Go check right now.
Yeah, you should always make sure that you have a fire extinguisher.
In your back pocket.
And a fire starter. You gotta have one to start, too.
Right. Just in case you're, at a friend's house.
I do mean have a copy of Firestarter, the book by Stephen King.
Oh, that's not what I was saying.
This week's episode of Watch No Evil brought to you by fire.
Tired of your electric bills going up because of your Christmas lights that you lit? Light your house on fire and commit insurance fraud. Anyways, back to the trivia. This is actually a very interesting one. What celebrity was rumored to say that this film was their favorite horror movie?
Steve Martin.
No.
Or Elvis Presley.
Okay, how'd you go from being so wrong to being absolutely correct?
Well, because Steve Martin is on there. He's up there because he starred in Roxanne with Olivia Hussle, whatever the girl's name is that played Jess. He told her that he would watch it all the time.
Okay, but how'd you get to Elvis from there?
Because I also knew that Elvis was the other one. And so if it wasn't Steve Martin, it was Elvis.
Okay, yeah, so it was said that he would watch it every Christmas, but what's weird about that is after this movie came out, he was only alive for 3 Christmases, so he would have
which is weird, right? I mean,
yeah.
So he didn't really see this movie. Did he watch other movies? I mean, he wrote Blue Christmas.
He's gonna have a black and blue Christmas. he's watching Black Christmas while listening to his single Blue Christmas. Anyways, last question. Which actor in the film was only present for a week of the filming?
I don't think I know. I would have to guess that it was maybe the person who played Claire.
No, it was actually a main character. It was Peter.
Oh, Peter only was in it for a week of filming?
Yeah, it was Keira D'Elia, I think is how you pronounce it. He also plays Dave from 2001 Space Odyssey, so it's kind of fun.
Dave.
But he actually never met most of the cast, and the directors had to be kind of creative with the pacing of the film to make him seem like he's present throughout, especially since they were planning on framing him for the murders. And you'll notice that he doesn't really interact with a lot of the characters. It's like Jess, and that's it.
That's interesting.
Right?
I wonder if there's some sort of like isolationist reasoning for that. Like they decided to do that so that it would be more. It was another subtle like, oh, it could be Peter because he doesn't interact with anybody else. Is Peter even real? They pull a beautiful mind.
He's a figment of
doing it.
Chess's imagination. It's immaculate conception.
That's what it is.
It's back to the Jesus thing.
We're rewriting this movie.
See, that would have been compelling.
That would have been a sick movie. And then the guy who keeps calling with all the gross, weird stuff is actually just a flash caller, whatever they're called.
Jess's alter ego that she recorded beforehand and is just playing off of.
Ooh, we're just gonna rewrite this whole movie right now. Okay, so the first time it happens, they're all surrounding the phone, right?
Yeah.
But then after that, it's only Jess who picks up the phone, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what if all of this other times it's just Jess like having this fake conversation with herself?
Yeah, and it's over her guilt of having to get an abortion.
So it's just her like losing it. Oh man, we should rewrite this movie. No, we shouldn't. It's been done.
At this point, I think people see a movie called Black Christmas and they're like, no.
And all they can think of is the Ashley Tisdale song of the same name.
Yeah.
It came out like right after Roe v. Wade, didn't it?
1973.
Possibly.
It's the same year. Maybe that's why they decided to include that plot point. Mm-hmm. Because they're like, our finger is on the pulse of America.
Right, and I don't think that there are a lot of other movies that touch on that. I can't think of a single other movie from that time period that would have hit on that so openly. Because this really, it hits on it. Like, no holds barred. It just says it.
Oh yeah, while we're next to the subject, what was up with her accent? Jess's accent. That bothered me the whole movie.
I don't know. I couldn't place it either, right? It's like I kept trying to figure out where it was from.
Olivia Hussey, the actress, maybe that was like her first big role, and she was like, I must take this seriously, so I'm going to be an actor.
She was in Romeo and Juliet, though. She was born in Buenos Aires.
She was born in Buenos Aires, but then they went to England. So she's been all over the place. It's a weird combination of Argentinian and English accent. Well, that explains it.
Good for her. You go, Olivia Hussey.
Yeah, and then she wins an Italian Oscar. She's been all over.
Italian Oscar. Well, we're going to be continuing on with the Christmas theme for the next couple of weeks, of course. We also have a Twitter account, so follow us on Twitter for other Watch No Evil content.
The Twitter handle is @WatchNoEvil1.
You can follow us there. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this week's episode of Watch No Evil Black Christmas Edition. This is Matt.
And this is Zach.
And whatever you do, don't forget to put out the cookies and milk.